The purpose of this video is to look in depth at the family group records. Let's begin by first opening the family group record page. That can be done up here or down here. Once that is opened, we can look at any of the surnames beginning with different letters of the alphabet. Let's begin with A, and let's look at the very top one, which is Domenico Antonio Amicantonio. That opened up, and now I'm going to scroll to the top, and we can see that, yes, it is the Domenico Antonio in 1690. Now, depending on your computer settings, I'm going to enable the editing. And let's begin with an overall view of the web page. You can see there are columns along here. There actually are, in this one, 42 columns, and then there are rows of 105 with data in them. Now, some of these columns have been made fairly small, such as these over here. It's because I wanted the page to show up on a typical computer screen showing the most used data. These columns here are data regarding census that are not used as frequently. If they are important, you can open up one at a time like this, and then see this is the burial date. Or if you want, you can highlight a number of them and open all of them to whatever width you want. And you can see this is the place of the burial, the census date, family name, street address, and so forth. Items that are not used quite as frequently. I'm going to close these up again, and I'm going to do it by doing this approach. I'm going to type in 0.5, and there they are. Now, one that you may want to use from time to time, just to see where the record comes from, is here are the two source documents. These are abbreviations to help with the researcher. BB stands for baptisms, MAR for marriage, and CEN for census. The census consists of the church Stato de Animes, which is status of the souls, basically a census of the parish membership, and then the Onciario and the Civil 1901 census. D, of course, stands for death. So that gives you a quick view of where this particular record came from. If you want to know in more detail, you can open up this column, and it gives you the exact name of the book and where in the book it is found. The RAA, which is column D, is if you have access to all the images we took, which we called the Roots Agnoni archive. It will show you for this book the actual image number. Then I'm going to close those back up. The columns are basically geared towards this down here, which is called the raw research. You have the year of the event that took place, the baptismal, the father's name, the mother's name, marriage date, spouse, death, and so forth. These last four were added by me for purposes of being able to quickly post the information from this line on Family Search. And you can see where this is the place name, this is the title of the document, this is the citation of the document, and this is the note as to what is contained in this line regarding that individual. Now let's look at the rows. The top set of rows, especially this part right here, is a very traditional family group record in any genealogy program, although sometimes they also include the parents' names and the places of the events. But we have here the name of the father, the name of the husband, wife, and children, their birthdays, baptismal days, and spouses. This is merely a convenience for us, a color legend. In the middle of the family group record is what we have called raw research of Agnoni records. This is where we have taken the master index, which is a spreadsheet of over 400,000 rows, and by use of filters, we've looked for combinations of names to find as many entries we can for a particular individual. Let's begin with the husband. His baptismal name, given by the priest, was Dominicus Antonius Amico Antonio. Now you can see his given name here is the Latin form of Domenico Antonio, and it was used in a couple church censuses thereafter. But the rest of his life, he went by Domenico. In general, we have converted the Latin to Italian. And sure enough, at the top, you can see that we so did. Now let's look at his surname. You can see these are all variations of the same name. In fact, I think there are 7 variations, but they are all the same. And we actually added a footnote here at the bottom that explains that we have used a standard name and the explanation of the variations. Now, something might be of interest is that you can see here the name of the father, and here's the Latin form for amico, and here's the name of the mother. The mother's name is almost all the same except for this one here that has a P instead of a T. The spouse is all the same, so you can be pretty sure that all these relate to Domenico Antonio, amico Antonio. Now let's look at the age of his birth. We have the baptismal date, which is January 24, 1690. 98% of all baptisms were performed within 2 days of the birth. So here we have estimated the prior day as his birthday. On the other hand, we have his marriage date, and we have assumed that he was 24 years old at the date of his marriage. So you merely subtract 24 from this and you come up with that. That is a reasonable approximation, but certainly just approximation. Here, on the other hand, we have a Stato de Anime taken in 1690, in which the priest said the child was 1 year old. Now, we don't know what month the priest took the census in. We know he was born in January, so by September, October, he may have said, oh, he's 1 year old. In 1697, he's estimated to be 8 years old. That would put his birth in 1689, and you can see the ages he's given in all these Stato de Animes put his birth year a variety of years. And we need to realize that the priests did the best they could, that they guessed much of the time, and their guesses varied from year to year. So these estimated birth years need to be taken with that in mind. We know the actual birth year is 1690, and here we have 1692 to 1694, and here's one that's 1699. They're guesses. But don't start thinking that there are separate individuals based upon these ages. Now here's the death record, and we can see here the priest estimated that he was 72, when in fact he was actually 75. Now let's look for the wife. We have estimated that she was born in 1694. This green, if we look at the color legend, this is relied on for date if conflict, and you can see her birth year. There is all sorts of conflicting estimates of her birth year. We have taken this one, 1694, which is an assumption that she was 22 years old at the date of her marriage, even though the various Stato de Animes suggest that she was born thereafter. The spelling of her given name and surname are all the same, likewise with the father, and the mother has a variation. Here's this first one. It might be phonetically similar, but not quite, but we see that the husband's name is all the same, and the mother's name is, at least the surname is all the same, the father's name, so we know this is the same mother. Either the priest heard it wrong, wrote it wrong, or the indexer got it wrong, but we know it's the same person. And then down below, by going through the entire master index of 400,000 plus entries, we came up with all the children we can find where the father had this name and the mother this name, or reasonable variations thereof. Now, here's one where the variation is quite significant, and that's for Angela Rosa. Let's look at all the entries for Angela Rosa and see what happened. Now, I'm going to hold down the left-hand button on the mouse, slide over as far as I want, and then go up here and select filter. That pops up these filter boxes, and I'm going to click on this filter box, unselect all, and select Angela Rosa. There's 2 variations of spelling of her name, and I'm going to say OK. Now this shows around 10 entries for her name: marriage, Stato de Animes, and death. Now, the first thing you may notice is that there are a great deal of variations in her birth year. From the earliest is 1727, and the latest is 1742. That's a significant span, and the question is, why is there that big of a difference? Oftentimes, I will assume that the earliest Stato dei Anime is the more accurate. The priest is less inclined to make an error for a child than for somebody in their 50s or 60s. So this one right here, when the child was age 1, would suggest 1735, and this one when the child was 2 is 1737. If we knew that these were absolutely accurate, then we would assume that a daughter was born in 1735, died at childbirth or soon thereafter, and a next child born in 1737 was given the same name. Here I don't see enough evidence of that other than this anomaly, but I'm going to assume that this is merely human error. For the very first Stato dei Anime, when they are 1 or 2 years old, sometimes there's something quirky about it, and it just doesn't seem as reliable as subsequent Stato dei Animes. In any event, we also have the issue of the age of the parents when she was born. She was the last to be born. If we go up here, we know that the father's birth date was 1690. That means he would have been 47 years old when Angela Rosa was born. Likewise, the mother, if we assume she was born in 1695, we're putting her in her 40s when Angela Rosa was born. And for that reason, I'd like to make the assumption that she was born a little earlier than later. In any event, a question is, why doesn't the mother have a birth year? And our estimate is she was born in 1694. If we go down to the bottom, there's a note here under General Notes, Lost Books, and it mentions that the books for 1692 to 1703 have been lost. That's the baptismal books. So that's why we don't have a baptismal record for the mother. But you'll find that oftentimes, for whatever reason, there is no baptismal record. Now, if I undo this, I can select another child by undoing the selection and then select whomever I want, so I can view what records we have for that individual. Now, the final part of the family group record is down here. We have special notes that are unique to this family group record, and then we have general notes regarding all the family group records, such as what are the sources, there are known inconsistencies and why there are those inconsistencies, the names, how we've tried to standardize the names, the genealogy programs, and here's the standardized places. We've worked on this a fair amount, trying to figure out what is the proper place for when the event occurred. There's two schools of thought. One is that you provide the place name that was current when the event took place. The other is to use the most current place name. Best practices are that you use the historic name at the time the event took place. And then the question comes up, how many jurisdictional units do you include in that place name? Here is the level of units that was agreed on with Family Search after their place team spent some time reviewing it with input from us. We recognize that when the civil records began, it said the district of Isernia, which is correct, but we are not including the district level in these place names. So going back to the top, I hope this gives you a decent overview of the family group record, how you can open up some of these columns that are too small to see, if there's information you want from those, the use of the color legends to hopefully make it easier when you search around. And in general, these are fantastic family group records. Not without error. We have made errors, but you can see the actual data found in hundreds of genealogical books from Agnone, and you can see in one place all the entries that appear to be for a particular individual, with all the inconsistencies due to human error, and then the assumptions that have been made in what we think is the best guess for the correct data. I hope you can enjoy the fruits of what we have provided. We are adding about 300 to 400 additional family group records per year. So you may want to check from time to time and see if additional names are provided.